Into 10, the Purple Guy Animatronic. The Purple Guy Animatronic legend is an urban legend revolving around FNAF in early 2015. A YouTube video service that reportedly showed a hidden animatronic reported to be the Purple Guy, who at the time the only name we had for the main antagonist. The appearance of the Purple Animatronic was preceded by a phone ringing because we thought that he was also the phone guy. And then after the phone rang, the Purple Animatronic would briefly flash on screen, slumped over against the wall in the office in a similar style to Golden Freddy. However, it was soon revealed that this was simply because the animatronic was simply a photoshopped image of Golden Freddy with a purple color and Chica's head. I think that it's pretty obvious that it was photoshopped, and I mean, like, we've used that image in thumbnails a couple of times, but no character like this has ever showed up in any of the games. But nevertheless, I'd still like to see it appear in the movie as like an Easter egg or a reference, okay? Same thing for, in at number 9, Buff Helpy. This meme, created by @Dominius on Twitter, Buff Helpy was made for the YouTuber Daco's FNAF meme reviews, since that was the primary content on his channel at the time. He made a joke in the video where he pretended to be terrified of it, and then people started sending him tons of memes about that one single image. It has since spread from there, leading to Buff Helpy even getting his own spin-off game. Yeah, he even has his own Urban Dictionary page that labels him as a traitor to his country who loves stalking the YouTuber Daco and somehow always makes it into Daco's FNAF meme reviews. Followed by the use of the term in Buff Helpy is best boy. Buff Helpy is not best boy, okay? And this entire thing was posted by a user called Buff Helpy Enthusiast. And you know what? Buff Helpy has also haunted me. I hadn't seen any of Daco's FNAF meme reviews, so luckily I was oblivious to this. However, people just started randomly sending it to me on Instagram, and then it kinda scared me from there. And while it may be haunting, at least a mention of it in the movie would be very much appreciated, like how Sonic was referenced in the Sonic movie. And it ate Chucky. Now, while not canon in the FNAF universe, there is certainly no doubt that Chuck E. Cheese's was the inspiration for the FNAF series. And while yes, the comments about Chipper and Son's Lumber Co. characters looking like robots pushed Scott towards the idea, we've made a whole video about how FNAF and Chuck E. Cheese are the same thing. So, getting a Chuck E. Cheese reference or Easter egg in the movie would be absolutely amazing. Even if it's someone just like proposing or pitching a new character that just so happens to look a hell of a lot like Chucky, that's good enough for me. There just needs to be some form of reference to it. Or, if you're not going to do that, make a reference to one of the many FNAF fan games in the Fanverse initiative, okay? Make them at least slightly canon in the movie universe of the FNAF multiverse. Show us like a Candy's Burgers and Fries paper plate, or like an Nights At Freddy proposition, okay? I mean, you did it in Security Breach, why not make it into the movie?
Number 7, Stitch Wraith? Another theory that I have is that we will actually get to see some crossover between the books and the film, with the appearance of the villain known as Stitch Wraith. In fact, I'm even thinking we might not see Stitch Wraith in the games until after their appearance in the film. The Stitch Wraith, being a seemingly methodical villain, could make for a good ally for a mastermind who is working behind the scenes and pulling all the strings. Stitch Wraith might not have as big of a role in the film, but appear in a post-credits scene and help to set up a FNAF franchise, being an important villain shrouded in mystery whose true purpose and master is revealed later on down the line. Kinda like we see in the books.
And it ate Fredbear. With the concept of a Mike screenplay, I think that everything relating to the major events in not just Michael's life, but the Aftons' lives as a whole would be essential to see, especially a moment as life-changing as the Bite of 83. So the Fredbear animatronic in non-nightmare form is a must in my eyes, but also not very likely unless it's like a flashback sequence. They're probably not going to worry about the events of the games, but this would probably just be an effort to confirm the main character as Mike and prove that Mike isn't Crying Child, but also as an Easter egg for fans that will hopefully have the 1983 date on the flashback. But then again, every 87 believer is going to say that they're different universes, so it doesn't count as confirmation. Either way, I think a Fredbear appearance is kind of mandatory, but I'm not in the movie, so who knows what they think is required. Scott, you should have put me in the movie. How many FNAF videos have I f***ing made at this point? 500? Yeah. God.
Number 5, Vin Diesel. I just think that this is such a comical cast that I had to include it. Vin Diesel as Freddy Fazbear. The reason that was listed for this fan cast is because of how swole Freddy looks. I also kind of believe that this could work though, even if we're just talking about voice work here. Vin Diesel might just be what we need to bring the fearsome presence of this character to life. I'm just saying, we've seen him play an animated character before in a film and he crushed it. He is amazing as Groot, which could mean he has what it takes to nail the main mascot character of Freddy.
For Golden Freddy. Golden Freddy is a mysterious ghost-like entity who takes on the form of the yellow animatronic bear version of normal Freddy. Like I said, he has 15 different versions. He plays a prominent role in the FNAF series, although his origins are cryptic and unknown, but many speculate that Crying Child at least one point possessed the animatronic, which would be an easy confirmation to make in a movie about his brother. Or on the other hand, many also believe Golden Freddy to be possessed by Cassidy, and that Cassidy is also the vengeful spirit, aka the one you should not have killed. Although in my research, it's much more likely that Crying Child is the vengeful spirit and Cassidy is the one who actually possesses Golden Freddy, since it makes for a better story. And in all honesty, okay, Cassidy doesn't really have any significance. I'm sorry. It's true though, okay. Cassidy is at least less significant than Crying Child. Actually, Cassidy has no meaning to the story at all, alright? The name reveal of Cassidy meant nothing to us. However, confirmation for any explanation or any sequence of events would be much appreciated. So needless to say, it would be great to see them, because it means that we might get something to help us figure this out properly. Maybe, unless the movie contradicts itself 10 minutes later, which I'm expecting.
Number 3, the franchise. If the FNAF movie focuses on FNAF 1, most people also expect, like with the games and books, we could see more films planned out, depending on the success of this one, of course. Ideally, this FNAF movie could be a jumping off point for a whole series of films and a film franchise based around the games and even books at some point as well. It is possible that with this film, Scott and the studio could already be setting stuff up that will come into play later down the line, not just considering this film as a standalone story, but as a piece to a much larger, more intricate puzzle, like we've seen with other successful video game inspired film franchises and comics inspired film franchises besides.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Foxy. Now, while Foxy may be a fan favorite and one of the core animatronics, it's pretty much guaranteed that he'll be in the movie. Although, while being in the core cast, there is another reason we need to see Foxy on the silver screen in the Mike story. Foxy bro. See, before we had seemingly confirmed the name of the older brother, since we were flip-flopping between whether Michael was the older brother or Crying Child's name, the only thing that we knew about the brother was that he enjoyed wearing the Foxy mask to scare Crying Child, seemingly also ripping the head off the stuffed version of the character, possibly due to jealousy. So we ended up nicknaming Michael Foxy Bro, mostly thanks to MatPat's suggestion. So I think that an animatronic that was highly associated with the character of Mike, or who at least we think Mike is, should absolutely be in the movie, and if not, I'm gonna be mad, alright? I wanna see a hook. And finally, in at number 1, Nightmares. I think that if this is really meant to be a horror movie, which it is, I mean, it's being produced by Blumhouse after all, the company that made Paranormal Activity, the nightmares are basically a requirement to actually make this scary. Sorry, but the normal animatronics aren't really all that terrifying. Scariest part about those games is the sounds that appear with the animatronics, but the nightmares are truly terrifying, and one of the reasons I don't want to play FNAF 4 or the night terror levels of Help Wanted. It's why I didn't complete the game, because I would have had to play those. These things are just absolutely horrific and iconic within the series, especially since they're the reason there is a movie at all. As you well know, at this point, Scott was planning on ending the series after Game 3, but the hate on the Springtrap jump scare made him make another game, and which was FNAF 4, and then he kept on going. If not for the Nightmare animatronics and the Springtrap hate, there wouldn't be a FNAF movie, and I think that deserves to be represented. Of course in a dream sequence, but still, it's worth it.
Number 10, Shia LaBeouf as Springtrap. Shia LaBeouf definitely has the fearsome spontaneity and killer instincts needed to play the role of Springtrap. Now, of course, technically Springtrap is William Afton, but I think this fan cast is all about the physicality of the animatronic, or perhaps some eerie voice work. Either way, LaBeouf could be just what we need. We know how intimidating he can be and how talented he is. Just hopefully he wouldn't go too method in preparation for this role. Number 9, Martin Freeman as Mike Schmidt. For some reason, I always imagined Mike Schmidt / Michael Afton to be younger than Freeman, like in my mind, but I also really like this casting. However, I will still also say that whenever I think of Martin Freeman, I think of two main roles: Watson from the Sherlock series and Arthur Dent from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Those are just the most iconic roles of his that stick out in my own mind. Both of these kind of roles, though, give us an impression of a fish out of water in a way, with Watson also being much more adept and skilled just in general as a human than Arthur. So the idea of a fish out of water type character like Mike, or a character attempting to solve a mystery, which is also kind of what ends up happening in FNAF 1 as it progresses, is something that Freeman could obviously easily tap into just based on these other roles that he's played. So likely he'd have the experience to nail this role. And friends, before we move on to this next point, if you want even more FNAF content, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Lewis Dawkins, aka Dawko. Obviously, when it comes to the FNAF movie, we are all hoping there will be some representation from the streamers who helped the games to become so successful, and who were also made more successful because of their love of this franchise as well. Dawko is one such streamer and YouTuber that I think fans are hoping there will be some kind of cameo role available for in the film. I personally would love to see some of our lovable cast of streamers that I think could pop up as victims in the movie. Or why not have Dawko appear as staff at the restaurant? Or perhaps he would be better as an animatronic, maybe a singing animatronic? He recently released his cover of the 8-bit Big Band's arrangement for Five Nights at Freddy's on YouTube, and I gotta say, he's actually got a really great voice. So I wouldn't mind him singing somewhere in the movie.
And at 7, Freddy. Feel like this one's kind of obvious, but I have to say it anyway. Freddy was the mascot when the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened up in 1983. And in 1987, he and the original animatronics had fallen into severe disrepair. That's when Freddy was replaced with his newer counterpart for the improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. You know, Toy Freddy. After that pizzeria closed, as well as the toy animatronics getting scrapped though, they refurbished the old animatronics for the new pizzeria, which was the old pizzeria, which is the one that we see in the first game. Yeah, that's FNAF. However, after the closure of that pizzeria, he and the other animatronics got dismantled by William Afton, the killer of the series. But Freddy is literally the title character, okay? Of not only the movie, but the series as well. And while he may not have originally been intended to move off the stage, he does now. He's the most iconic FNAF animatronic ever. He has like 15 variations on his design over the past 8 years since the series has been active. So yeah, I want to know, I expect to see Freddy on the big screen. And if he isn't there, I will riot at the local Chuck E. Cheese.
Number 6. Willem Dafoe as William Afton. I mean, I'm basically just down for casting Willem Dafoe in just about anything. I think he needs to be in more stuff because, well, he's just so amazingly talented. I want him in everything. Everything I've seen him in, he has done an amazing job, whether he's playing the role of an ally, hero, or villain. In this case, he'd be taking on a much more villainous role, but we know how good he can be at nailing those kinds of roles, especially considering he's still pretty much everyone's #1 pick for Green Goblin, aka Norman Osborn, should he ever return to the film-adapted comic book world of Spider-Man. Fun fact, while I definitely still feel like we could always use more Dafoe in our films, FNAF included, did you know that he's actually been in over like 100 films? In 2021 alone, he'll have appeared in 5 different movies. That is a lot of work, but hopefully he can fit FNAF into his busy schedule. I want that depth, you know? Number 5, FNAF 1. The film will take inspiration from the first game, at least that's what we've been led to believe. This theory has been based around things Scott Cawthon said on Reddit and suggested the main protagonist of the film will be the security guard that we play as in the first game, and will expand on his story. The security guard is named Mike Schmidt, and many believe that this is an alias that is actually used by Michael Afton, William's son, who accepted the job for a yet unconfirmed purpose, but one that is highly speculated to be heroic or investigatory in nature. As such, the film is believed to have centered around Michael Afton, who will of course become the protagonist and possibly hero of this story. Number 4, Idris Elba. Why do I love this fan cast? Well, because it just makes me think of Idris Elba in Cats. Also, I love Idris Elba in anything. Idris Elba can just basically do it all. Honestly, he could play an inanimate object and I'd probably still love his performance. He's just so compelling to watch and so skilled as a performer. I actually really liked him in Cats somehow, despite the fact that that movie was an experience. Who are we thinking of Idris Elba for in regards to this project, though? Some have suggested that he would make a great Foxy, and weirdly enough, I can kinda get behind that idea. Foxy is one of the most lovable animatronic, despite the fact that he's still an antagonist and still has a very murderous nature. Elba could likely capture that lovable side of Foxy while also terrorizing us as a fearsome animatronic pirate fox.
Getting close to the end, and in number 3, the puppet. The puppet is an animatronic puppet, obviously. That is a major antagonist, but also a good guy in the FNAF series. First appearing as the main antagonist of FNAF 2, but on later games showing its heroic side, it possibly serves as the prize vendor of the newly refurbished Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria in 1987, the one FNAF 2, which also is a new one, but then also ends up becoming the old one. Although it's implied that it was originally from Fredbear's Family Diner, and that's a whole other can of worms that I am not going to talk about, because hell no. After the pizzeria was only open for a few short weeks, though, it was closed down, but the puppet, unlike the other toy animatronic were scrapped, possibly due to malfunctions, was not scrapped, later appearing in the new pizzeria from the first game as evidenced by the dream cutscenes, and appearing as Lefty in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, aka FNAF 6. Lefty was an animatronic intended to capture the puppet because Charlotte's father, Henry, knew that her soul possessed the animatronic. However, it's also widely believed that Charlotte was William's first victim, meaning that overall they have the most significance to the story. So definitely required if we're going to have a story based on William Afton's crime spree and how it affects his only living child, which is the whole concept for FNAF, so I'm guessing it's gonna happen.
Number 2, Jack Black. Jack Black as phone guy? Or maybe Scott Cawthon? Jack Black being in the movie at this point seems like something we all need and we want to happen. And not only that, it also seems like something that probably will happen. Jack Black has been promoting Five Nights at Freddy's on his own socials a bunch, and he is such a talented performer and a box office success, so it seems like a win-win to cast him at this point if they haven't already. Either he's already in it, hence all the love on his socials for the franchise, or he's just a huge fan in general, in which case FNAF gets Jack Black and he gets to be in a film about a franchise that he's passionate about, which seems great. Whatever role he takes on, this is an actor I would love to see. Number 9, rating. The rating for the film is definitely something many of us have pondered on. Many people love FNAF, including younger kids. With that being a consideration, who the targeted demographic is for this film, and the varied ages in terms of its fan base, because I mean, it's not just kids, a lot of us love FNAF, it is possible that we'll see the rating of this film be lowered for this reason, in terms of what they'll be allowed to actually show. It makes the most sense that it'll be PG or PG-13 for this reason. If that is the case, the film will have to be careful in terms of what it shows or even implies, as a PG rating means that only some of the content is allowed to even be considered unsuitable for kids. Only some, and even considered. So many of the themes that we see in the games will have to be modified, cut, or made less scary somehow. The other theory with the rating is that we'll get one that more promotes and allows for the level of horror that we would expect. But in that case, the film would have to be a little bit more exclusive, with most children probably not being allowed to go see it. Either way, it seems we're going to have a problem when it comes to what is in the film in terms of horror components and who can actually go see it. And friends, before we move on to our next spot in the video, if you want to see this movie and you are concerned about the rating, or you're just like, let me see it, be sure to give us a thumbs up. It's true, when you give this video a thumbs up, it actually increases the speed at which the FNAF movie is produced. Number 8, part of the multiverse. It's really hard to contemplate the potential for this film to be canon. I mean, we have all the Fazbear Frights books, and I mean, there's also more coming, and it really depends on who you talk to as to what level of canon they consider those books to be, if they include them in the game canon at all. I personally feel like while there are contradictions between the world of the books and the world of the games, it is possible that both of these could exist within the same world if we just acknowledge the existence of a FNAF multiverse. Then everything gets to be relevant, and some things can even overlap in terms of similar stories and explanations for characters. With the film, we could also see the introduction of a new universe belonging to the FNAF multiverse. That then not only gives us answers, but also helps us to connect the dots, as well as undoubtedly giving us more questions. Because, you know, this is still FNAF after all while being able to connect to the games and book canon, while still being able to have enough differences to keep us guessing and interested. Give me a FNAF multiverse, let's acknowledge it.
Number 7, Evan Peters as Mike Schmidt. I gotta be honest, I personally love this fan cast pick. I love Evan Peters in general. He's well known for his portrayal of Quicksilver in Fox's X-Men universe, but I also love him for pretty much all the characters he's played in American Horror Story. Evan Peters is no stranger to the horror genre either, and was recently cast to play the title character and serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer in the TV miniseries Monster: The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. Evan Peters is usually very likable in any role he plays, so I think this not only means that he would be a great candidate for the potential protagonist of Mike Schmidt, aka Michael Afton, but it could also make him a great candidate for a villain that ends up revealing their true intentions at the last minute.
Number 6, Springtrap. One of the scariest animatronics around is definitely Springtrap, which is the hybrid suit that William Afton wore and later found himself trapped in when he was spring-locked and impaled while wearing it. Springtrap is the main antagonist of Five Nights at Freddy's 3. In FNAF 3 we face hallucinations which can terrorize us, as well as the very real threat of Springtrap, which comes with William Afton's body inside it, controlling the suit. Just the idea of a human being who became impaled by a bunch of springs and mechanics and trapped within a suit, each step creating agonizing pain as those locks and springs grind against your bones, is horrific. Also, just the visual image of an animatronic that seems to be oozing something bodily, some blood or pus with real eyes, it creates a powerful and haunting visual that would make for a compelling villain throughout the film. I'm just saying.
Halfway through into number 5, Springtrap. Springtrap is also kind of a mandatory appearance in my mind, because after all, he's the main antagonist of the series. And while the story is about Mike, based on the games, the only version of William that could appear is Springtrap. If you think about it, Michael was a teen, or close to it, in 1983, meaning that by the time the first game comes around in 1993, he would probably be around 23 to 26. But at this point, William was also already Springtrap, since as we're going through the FNAF 3 minigames, we see Mangle walking around, meaning that this takes place around FNAF 2, but shortly after, so that the toy animatronics could get scrapped. So unless this takes place while Mike is a teenager, which could make sense given the demographic of the FNAF fandom, the only real version of William that is at least part animatronic, since this list is the animatronics we want to see in the movie, would be Springtrap, since Scraptrap doesn't come until Michael's death in FNAF 6, and they wouldn't kill off the protagonist of the movie in the first movie, and Burntrap doesn't come until after Mike is actually dead. So yes, the only version of William that has robotic parts that could be in this movie would be Springtrap. Springtrap isn't a full animatronic, but you know what, it's my list.
Number 4, Scott Cawthon plays Phone Guy. Obviously, we are all going to lose our minds if we don't get a Scott cameo or Easter egg somewhere in this film, but if we are going the way of FNAF 1, I think it would only be fitting if Scott reprised his role of Phone Guy, personally. He could of course just provide the voice for the character, who we may also never see in the film, just like in the game, but I think we are all hoping and expecting to see his face show up somewhere on screen, even if it's only briefly. I personally know I would love to at least get a single scene with Scott as Phone Guy where we see what ended up happening to him, or simply get a tease as to his gruesome fate on screen. There are a lot of ways that Scott as Phone Guy could make an appearance that would be satisfying and entertaining.
Number 3, Matthew Patrick, aka Matt Pat. I think we're all expecting Matt Pat to show up somewhere in the film, but the question is, where will he show up? I personally think he would make a great cameo as a staff member or a former patron who attempts to warn the protagonist, likely Mike, of the danger that they're in. I imagine Matt Pat's role as similar to basically what he's known for when it comes to his FNAF content on YouTube, a wild theorist who has been keeping track of all the evidence and clues to solve the mystery. He might have an idea about what's going on there and be one of the key characters other than Phone Guy to tip off Mike, instigating Mike's own investigation into the horrific history of the restaurant and its franchise.
Number 2, Bite of 87. Another idea for the film is that it will be the precursor to FNAF 1 and simply focus on it in terms of setting it up. We could see the beginnings of the restaurant be its focus, or at least see an element of that included, perhaps focusing on the mystery of the Bite of 87. And maybe we'll also get like a younger Mike in this movie, and also answering the mysteries behind the Bite of 87. This could be the film that sets up the world and with it establishes a more clear narrative in terms of the accidents that took place and who is at fault. It is also weird that I would actually be really into a sort of murder mystery vibe for a film that dives into the Bite of 87. Is that weird? Was it Mangle? I mean, I need to know. I have so many questions. Things are still unclear. Just give me a movie that explains the timeline. That would be magic to me. Number 1, William Afton's origins. One of the things that I feel like would be the most earth-shattering if it were to appear would be the origin story for William Afton. It would be amazing if we got a film centered on him and his life, which helped us to understand just why he became a murderer and what his motives are. Was Afton a well-intentioned business owner and family man and something happened to him? Or did he always have more sinister intentions when it came to the Fazbear franchise? Is his story real? Or does it perhaps only exist in video games made by the company who created Help Wanted and who are interested in simply sensationalizing an accident that happened at a real restaurant? It would be crazy if it turned out to be that meta of reasoning as to like why he exists, but in a weird way it could also make a lot of sense and solve a lot of like weird plot holes that we have. Either way, if we get some hints even to this huge question mark that is William Afton and why he kills, that would be amazing. Number 10, book tie-ins. In his Reddit post listing previous screenplay attempts and the final chosen pitch, Scott Cawthon mentioned that he tried 3 times to write a screenplay based on the books with co-writer Kira Breed Risley, but that his inexperience in screenplay writing ultimately got in the way of any of these sticking or being good in his opinion, even with Kira's help. However, it is possible that we could see elements of the books pop up in the film, either tied into the plot or alluded to in Easter eggs. I would still say it's a good idea to brush up on these books before watching the film, as I feel like focusing on the plot of the first game will give Scott more freedom to elaborate on elements of the books without being tied to them as much, which was likely the problem when he approached screenwriting solely from that angle. Number 9, new animatronic. This is something that would probably break the internet if it happened. A new animatronic being introduced in the film would be huge. While this theory isn't really based on any facts, it's a theory that I kind of still hope happens. I'm sure the FNAF movie will have tons of surprises in store for us to keep us guessing, keep us on our toes, and this is one that I personally would just love to see happen. There are so many animatronics that have been introduced via the games over the years. It would be cool to see a new animatronic find its way into the franchise via the film. The question is, what kind of animatronic would you want to see? And who do you think would be a cool animal or perhaps a non-animal animatronic to join Freddy's horrific crew? And friends, before I move on to this next spot, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. I promise you, if you click like, it means that all of your dreams will come true in this movie. Anything that you want, just think about it. Click like. Oh, it's gonna happen now. It's definitely gonna happen. Disclaimer, it might not happen. Sorry about that. Number 8, Golden Freddy's appearance. Golden Freddy is a rare character that pops up in the first game, so it is very likely we could see him pop up in the movie as well. But perhaps we'll get to see a different version of the character, a more synchronized one in comparison to the other animatronics. Perhaps we'll get to see an active animatronic version of Golden Freddy on the prowl in the film, and have him join his fellow teammates in terrifying our protagonist or protagonists. It could be cool to see Golden Freddy play a more active role in the film, seeing as how he's kind of more of a rare side character in the game. Or perhaps instead we'll get something more in line with that and only get a little peek or Easter egg in regards to his appearance in the FNAF movie. Of course, I'd prefer if he had a more active role, but we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Number 7, Nick Cage cameo. Nick Cage being the star character of Willy's Wonderland would make a pretty cool person to cameo in FNAF. 1, so many people are big fans of Cage, and 2, he just starred in a film that definitely had major FNAF vibes, while not being officially tied to the franchise or its own film in any way. Thus far, anyways. Also, Nick Cage is just fun, and he's usually up for a laugh with a good sense of humor, even when it comes to himself and his own body of work, so this could be something he'd be up for. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't mind a little crossover between the two very different films, which share a very similar premise.
Number 6. Markiplier. This is a fan theory that I personally think could actually end up happening. While Markiplier is a YouTube personality well known for his game playthroughs, he is also a performer and an actor and has played characters in various music videos, and he even had his own YouTube original interactive adventure series, A Heist with Markiplier. He definitely is comfortable being on camera, and he has the personality for entertainment for sure. And he's a huge FNAF fan and supporter, so it would make a lot of sense if he got even just a small role in the film. Of course, Mark did tweet about his thoughts on landing a role in the FNAF movie in 2015, and he didn't seem too optimistic, tweeting, "To the people telling me I need to be in the FNAF movie, I don't think that's how movies are done." But hey, that was 2015 and it was a long time ago, and a lot has changed since then. Many fans are speculating that Mark will have a role in the film, but we'll likely have to wait to find out just what.
Number 5. Chuck E. Cheese sponsor. This seems highly unlikely given the fragile state that Chuck E. Cheese is in right now, having kind of just emerged from bankruptcy, but it could also be really smart of the Chuck E. Cheese franchise to team up with FNAF. After all, think of how much money they could make if they tried to appeal more to the FNAF fan, who keep saying at least how much they wish Freddy's was real and that they wish they could visit a version of the restaurant in real life. Ideally, a more safe version, I imagine, but I think the potential in terms of money that could be made all around from that partnership could be huge. It would be cool to see Chuck E. Cheese acknowledged or promoted somewhere in the film, considering it's as close as we have to a real-life Freddy's currently.
Number 4. Visiting Pirate Cove. Everyone loves Foxy, so it's of course very likely that we'll see him appear in the film. But I believe we'll get not just a closer look at the restaurant's interior and get to explore it in a beautiful cinematic setting, but we will actually get to take a look behind the curtain and get immersed in what Pirate Cove is like. Foxy being such a fan favorite, I think will translate to some more screen time for the animatronic, as well as further exploration and development on not just him as a character, but also his personality and his home of Pirate Cove. I know that Foxy likely won't be the friend that we'd all hoped he was, sadly, but it would still be cool to see him more prominently featured in the film and to get to explore what might lurk behind that curtain. I really want there to be like a Freddy's so I can actually go to Pirate Cove, because I love pirates. I even have a pirate tattoo, so I'm so ready for this.
Number 3. Puppet appearance. One of the characters in animatronics that I think is the most terrifying is the puppet, which makes me wonder if we could potentially see the character in the film. Will we get to know Charlie's story or merely see this animatronic as some kind of monster? Will we even get to learn the truth of the trapped souls within the animatronics in this adaptation at all? Or will that reveal be left for a sequel as a kind of misdirect, because we'll be like, where was that? And then later they'll be like, oh, it's still there. I would love to see Charlie and Henry make an appearance of some kind, and for us to get some kind of insight into their story and involvement with the Freddy's franchise. If anything, as horrifying as the puppet is, I think because of Charlie's involvement and backstory, this could make the animatronic a really, really good option for what I was talking about earlier, with maybe one or all of the animatronics being somewhat helpful to our protagonist at some point in the film. Or perhaps Henry himself will make an appearance helping out in memory of his lost daughter, which could also be cool.
Number 1. Questions answered. We may or may not see William Afton appear in the film, but regardless of if we see him or not, I am still hoping we'll get some questions answered when it comes to, well, the purpose of all of this. On part 1, we talked a bit about potential antagonists we could see here and potential motivations that could be revealed. But either way, I'm betting that this film will give us some answers to some pretty big questions. And like most other parts of the franchise, also give us just some pretty big questions to be puzzled out by fans later on. Because it honestly wouldn't be FNAF without a bit of unresolved intrigue, now would it? Mainly, I think this film will focus on why previous murders or other such terrors specified took place, and will solve that mystery. Perhaps just in a way that fits the plot of the film, or perhaps giving us some more universal motivation in terms of the games, books, and the overall FNAF verse.
Number 10. A twist. Obviously, we are already well versed in the story of FNAF. Well, I mean, well-versed isn't exactly accurate, as there are still admittedly a lot of pieces missing when it comes to the lore, but you know what I mean. There is a lot that we already know, like who the main villain is, how the victims were killed, etc, etc. Many of the mysteries have been solved, and then many still remain unsolved. So how will the film adaptation keep us on our toes? Well, some believe this will happen with debunked theories being utilized, giving us a sort of unexpected alternate storyline that can still surprise us. Such as, what if the phone guy was actually the purple guy? Or what if the experience of the games is all the recurring nightmare of the murderer who killed everyone and represents their guilt over what they've done? Number 9, post-credits scene. I feel like this one is a given considering that we have so many successful franchises out there already, and so many other studios interested right now in turning their film idea into the next successful one. But what will the post-credits scene be about is the question. To warrant an educated guess, we would need to know a lot more about the plot probably, but for now we can try to guess based off of what we know about the story thus far. So, we know the screenplay Scott Cawthon and the team decided to go with is referred to as the Mike screenplay, and that it has the best pieces from all the other previous attempts. Many people believe that the screenplay will be based off of the events of the first game based on the name for it. So what does that mean? Namely that the post-credits scene will likely hint at the fact that the secrets that were revealed during the film are likely even bigger than we could imagine. We could see the hint at a greater villain such as William Afton or Stitch Wraith, or perhaps even Circus Baby and Sister Location. After all, the films don't need to follow the same path or order as the games, they just have to keep us intrigued and entertained. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder to hit that like button if you haven't already, and if you want more FNAF content here on this channel. Remember, every time you hit that like, it takes a day off of when we can expect to see this film. It's shortening the time. Just kidding, it's not shortening the time, but who knows, maybe it is, it could be possible. Number 8, Willy's Wonderland Easter egg. Everyone knows about the other film that recently came out that is basically Five Nights at Freddy's, but without the official IP or license. It stars Nick Cage as a passerby who gets roped into working the night shift at Willy's Wonderland, in exchange for having his broken down car repaired. His character spends most of the film not speaking, but proves himself to be more of a threat to the animatronics that roam the family restaurant than they are to him. Willy's Wonderland was not made in partnership with anything FNAF, but it was still evidently inspired by the franchise. It would be cool to see some kind of nod to Willy's in the film, even if it's just perhaps like a light joke poking fun at the copycat film or the franchise featured in it. Because although like they kind of are taking the idea, I kind of love when people are like inspired by things like FNAF and make cool stuff out of it.
Number 7, the real monster. The animatronics in the first game are the main antagonists you go up against, but as the story has developed throughout the game franchise, we have learned that although the animatronics pose great risk and have murderous tendencies, they aren't the main villain. William Afton is. I'm more inclined to believe that like the games, some other greater villain will be revealed to be the mastermind behind it all, and that the animatronics in the end, like in the games, will also sort of be victims of that main villain. Perhaps it will be William Afton. The animatronics will just have vengeful spirits trapped within them who are kind of warped into something evil, and in fact in the end they may even help our hero by the end of the movie, banding together with them to fight against this greater evil. That would be really satisfying to watch, I think.
Number 6, You've Got a Friend in Me. Well, we know that one of the screenplays Scott Cawthon got rid of, referred to as the Pawn Shop screenplay in his FNAF movie Reddit post, featured too much of a friendship connection between a boy and an animatronic. It could be possible that we'll still see some element of this reflected in the film. After all, the main villain, as we know from the games, is actually William Afton, and the animatronics, while murderous, are just as much his victims, souls of children trapped within them, fueling the vengeful actions of the animatronics, but really deep down wanting to be free. It would be cool to see some kind of team-up moment between our protagonist and at least one animatronic, where for a moment their goals line up and they are inclined even to maybe help one another.
Number 5, time period. One thing that we always need to come back to with FNAF is the timeline, which honestly is just, it's kind of everywhere. What is this timeline? When it comes to the film though, it makes us wonder what year the film will actually be set in. Scott on Reddit mentioned that it would center around the story told in the first game and as the security guard we play as in that game named Mike. Does that mean it will be set then in the same time period or adapted to modern day? I feel like having a cell phone in your pocket that you could just, call for help on or use as a flashlight could make things feel a lot less scary. So it seems likely that the story will be told in a similar time period to the games, either the 80s or the 90s. Both of these time periods are also pretty trendy right now when it comes to eras that we enjoy revisiting in film, television, and other entertainment. What do you think? Will we see a more modern take on this story or will it be set in the same time period as the games? Also, how will the movies even attempt to approach this tangled timeline? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Number 4, Freddy's pop-up. Closer to the release of the film, another idea for something we could see in terms of promotion, perhaps once again in partnership with Chuck E. Cheese, is a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza pop-up. Even if it wasn't a place you could go to play games and be entertained by animatronics, having even a pop-up delivery pizza place with costumed versions of the animatronics, maybe even delivering pizza, would be insane. Great for promotion, great for hype, and also great for revenue. Maybe even great for pizza? It would also blow my mind if this happened as a promotional stunt and the pizza itself was amazing. That would be unlikely, but I would also embrace it and it would be awesome.
Number 3, lots of jump scares. FNAF heavily uses jump scares to startle its players, with animatronics each having their own jump scare animation, used to startle you once that animatronic has caught you, or depending on which game in the franchise you are playing, just to unnerve you if they happen to only be a hallucination. Jump scaring is also a technique typically employed in the making of horror films, where tension is built up for something to leap out at you, or when an otherwise calm or focused moment is interrupted suddenly by a ghoul or monster that unexpectedly startles you. Music is also a huge part of this technique, and having the right music come in at the right time can really heighten the fear you feel. Honestly, most horror films rely heavily on their score, their music to startle you. Trust me. Try watching your favorite horror film on mute and see what a difference it makes. It'll probably make a really big one. Because jump scares are so heavily utilized in the games, it's likely we'll also see this horror tactic used heavily in the film in some capacity. I personally anticipate a lot of jump scare fakeouts just to keep us on our toes. Like a lot of moments where you're like, oh, is there gonna be one? And then there isn't one, and then they get you somewhere else. Ugh, I love/hate that in movies.
Number 2, new narrative. While we've all speculated on which games will really inspire the film's story and which bits of narrative from the games will make it into the film, it's entirely possible, like with other successful franchises, that the FNAF movie will take inspiration from the games and the plots there, but provide their own take on where the story goes and what secrets are revealed. After all, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is now a long and developed and highly profitable film franchise, has relied on giving people fresh takes on established characters and their stories, to keep those interested in the source material, the comics, the animated series, and previous animated films more on their toes. I think this is something that will be integral actually to the film's success. We want to feel that tie to the games, but we also want the movie to surprise us, because I mean, that's a big part of what we love in general about the games and their lore and this franchise. The twists, the turns, the speculation, the unexpected reveals. Number 1, release date? When will we see this film? Most sources seem to claim that the FNAF movie is filming currently, with the film having been expected to start filming in spring of 2021, which I mean, is kinda now. However, if it was filming currently, it would be likely we'd see some kind of buzz about the shoot, and yet we don't really have any confirmed images from the set. There are, however, lots of fan film set images available if that interests you, and in fact some of those fan film sets are pretty impressive, so something to look at least while you wait for official images from the movie itself. The lack of set news and pictures, however, means that it's more than likely the film is still in pre-production stages, with our last report coming from Jason Blum late last year, stating that they were still ironing out the details of the plot, and Scott himself only making the post confirming the script premise 4 months ago. What does this mean for release? Well, we don't really have an announced cast yet, and once we have that, it'll likely be 2 years from then till we can kind of expect the movie to hit theaters, which means that if the cast was announced, let's say say this year in 2021, we likely wouldn't be able to expect the film until 2023. So sadly, the release date could be a while.